Good morning, and welcome to part 10 of our study of the book of Ecclesiastes. Now, if you've been following this along, you'll realize that Solomon, in his older life, is trying to find the meaning of life. He, as a young man, believed in God, he followed God, had a relationship with God, but as he grew older, he grew away from this. He became involved with more secular ideas, with paganism, with pagan philosophers, and then questioned the reality and the existence of God entirely. This is not unlike many of people today who belong to the church, who go to the church in their younger life, but yet as they get older they get more involved with the worldly things, get more involved with worldly ideas, and then question the existence of God, only to come back later on in life to wonder what life is really all about. And this is what Solomon's doing. He's trying to analyze this question for himself and for us. And he has in the first two chapters of Ecclesiastes just determined what life would be like without God. And it was his impression, it was his opinion, that life really without a God is meaningless. That life goes on, that there's no real change in what we do overall. We don't affect the world, we don't affect the system to any great extent. And that life without some eternal aspect, without something beyond this life, is really meaningless, and as he puts it, vanity. And he also described what it was like in wisdom, to have just wisdom. Wisdom itself, he said, is also vanity. And he puts it this way at the end of chapter 1, for in much wisdom is much grief, and he who increases knowledge increases sorrow. So he sought his meaning for life in pleasure, in just entertainment, in what he could build, in what he could do, in what he could enjoy. He had, in addition, 700 wives and 300 concubines, and all of this he determined was also just vanity. In chapter 2 he talks about what he did. I made my works. I planted all kinds of fruit trees. I made myself water pools. I did. I. And he did all of this, but he determined this also in the end was not really satisfying. There was no real meaning in life. And really at the end of it all, both those who were wise and those who were foolish, those who were wealthy, those who were poor, all end up the same way. They all end up as dust in the ground as death overtakes them. And in the end, there's no real difference. So he went back then in chapter 3 to talk about how there must be a God, because there was so much timing for everything. Everything had a time, everything had a place, everything had a time for it to be. And that the world was organized in this way, that there must be a God. And that perhaps we wouldn't understand it all, but there must be something after this world more than what we could see and understand in this dominion. And therefore he felt that there must be a God because of this organizational aspect of what had been seen by himself and what he could understand himself. But then he went back again to the sort of the darkness of the whole thing, because he could not understand why, if there was a God, why there was so much evidence of injustice in the world, why there was evil in places of judgment and in places of righteousness. He went back again in the other direction, saying perhaps God is going to judge all these people after this world is over. And he sort of rationalized it from this extent. And he went back again to the darkness of life and talked about the oppression in life. The tears of the oppressed have no comforter. The tears of the oppressed have no one against the powerful of those who are over them. And he said, perhaps because of this, it might even be better never to have been born, if this was your case. If you were one of the oppressed, if you were one of the ones who were downtrodden, perhaps it would be better not even to be born. Because he said, who has not seen the evil work that is done under the sun? And now he talks again of selfish toil, of the fool folding his hands and doing nothing, and being just as bad as the one who toils all the time. So there is work that is necessary, but too much work is vanity, and too little work is also meaningless. So now in the latter part of chapter 4, he goes on to these words, "Then I returned, and I saw vanity under the sun. There is one alone, without companion. He is neither son nor brother, yet there is no end to all his labors. Nor is his eye satisfied with riches, but he never asks, for whom do I toil and deprive myself of good? This also is vanity and a grave misfortune." So what he's saying, that there are people who actually do all their life working for what end? They put work before relationship. It says that selfishness is the cause of evil. In Psalm 127 verse 2, it says, "Slave to his business, it is vain for you to rise up early, to sit up late, to eat the bread of sorrow, for so he gives his beloved sleep." 1 John 2:16 puts it this way, "For all that is in the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life is not of the Father, but is of the world." And he's talking here about people who spend their whole life working, trying to get ahead, trying to do things, trying to make a name for themselves, trying to continually strive to make money, to obtain goods, at the expense of any relationship. And he says, this is not right. This is not right. This is all vanity, all foolishness, because what happens at the end? When it's all over, what happens? Then he says, because of this, it's important to have companionship, to have relationships. In the next part of the chapter, he goes on to this: two are better than one, because they have a good reward for their labor. What he's saying is that two people, companions, people who work together, can often do better, be more profitable, be more productive than one by themselves. And in addition, you get other benefits. You create a bond, you create a friendship, you create a companionship, which may go beyond the actual labor itself. So two are better than one, because they have a good reward for their labor. And if they fall, one will lift his companion up, so that one is there to help the other if they should stumble. So he's talking now about having relationships in addition to work. And he says, "But woe to him who is alone when he falls, for he has no one to help him up." This is the real meaning of having a friend, having a companion, having a relationship. Now this goes back in a sense to the idea of marriage. In Genesis it says that it is not good for man to be alone. And it's referring there to the marriage. But this also refers as well to that, as just to a companion, a friend, a compatriot, someone who's with you to help you through life, to help you be more productive, to help with your work, and with whom you can create a friendship. And he goes on to say, "Again, if two lie down together, they will keep warm. But how can one be warm alone?" There's many different potential meanings for this. One, of course, is in the marriage act, where people will lie together. But also in those times, in cold nights, people would lie together just for the warmth of each other's body. And it also means, too, that there's a warmth in a companionship, in a relationship between two people who get along together, who help each other, who support each other. And there's a general feeling of warmth and friendship and relationship there, which one cannot have if they're by themselves. So if two lie down together, they will keep warm. And how can one be warm alone? Though one may be overpowered by another, two can withstand him. And again, this means just exactly what it says, that one by himself may be overpowered by an adversary, whereas two or more may have a better chance against such a person. You can protect each other, you can support each other, you can keep each other comfortable, you can be a friend with each other. So two, he's talking about the value of a friend, the value of a relationship, comparing to the first part of the study today, where it says that one alone without companion works all the time for himself and for no reason. But then he throws a little kicker at the end of this, where he says, a threefold cord is not quickly broken. He's been talking before about two. Two are better than one. Now he's talking about a threefold cord. And there's again two interpretations for this, because he may be referring to having children, so that a man and a wife and having children now are a threefold cord, which may be stronger than the man and the wife or the companion together. But he also may be referring to the fact that God may be the third person here, that any two people with God is a lot stronger than the persons by themselves. And especially a man and a wife with God involved is a much stronger bond than just the man and the wife by themselves. So he says here, a threefold cord is not quickly broken. Then he goes on to the last part of the chapter where he says, better a poor and wise youth than an old and foolish king who will be admonished no more. This is difficult to know whether he's talking about himself, because he was once wise when he was young and became more foolish as he became older, and then refused to be corrected. And it also is applicable to people today who become powerful and then refuse to take correction or advice. It says he comes out of prison to be king, although he was born poor in his kingdom. There's an indication this may be a reference to Joseph, who came out of prison to be a king in Egypt when he became second in command in that country. But it's also difficult to know if this is referring to himself or to his father. He was born poor in his kingdom. He comes out of prison to be a king. He was born poor in his kingdom. I saw all the living who walk under the sun. They were with the second youth who stands in his place. There's an indication here that he's talking about the king who follows himself, or he who followed the king, his father David. That people tend to support people for a while, and then as time goes on, they want to support the one who comes behind them. People are fickle. They tend to only support people for a certain period of time, and even if they're doing very well, they tend then to throw their support against the successor and leave the initial person more alone or abandoned. So they were with the second youth who stands in his place. There was no end of all the people over whom he was made king. Yet those who come afterward will not rejoice in him. Surely this also is vanity and grasping for the wind. So what he's saying really, that one's popularity in this world, no matter who you are, no matter what you've done, is fleeting. So you build yourself up, you become a king, you become a very popular person, you become a movie star, you become a president, you become a prime minister, whatever it is, your popularity builds up. And then people tend to fade away, and after a while they become more for the person following you, and your own popularity fades away. No one is popular forever. No one does what everyone wants forever. To everything there is a season. And therefore what he's saying is that people who become famous, come out of prison, become poor, who become famous, who become kings, who become leaders, they become popular. And then after a while their popularity fades. People who come after them then become more popular. and the person who is older, who has been there for a while, is more left and abandoned. And this is really what he's saying. Who will come afterwards will not rejoice in him. Surely this also is vanity and grasping for the wind. Obtaining popularity, obtaining power is fleeting. And in the end, in this world, power, popularity, prestige is only transient, and in the end becomes vanity and really meaningless. Now, perhaps it's not quite to that extreme in all cases, but I think the point is made that what we do in this world, whatever we obtain in this world, whatever we achieve in this world, has a time limit. And one's achievements are superseded by the achievements of someone after him. In sports, records are made by people, and people are acknowledged for this, and then afterwards someone comes and breaks the records, and the first people are more or less put aside. Leaders are built up, they're made, they create and they do, and then someone comes after them who seems to be better, and the population and the popularity changes to the second person. This is what he's saying, that really everything you do for prestige, for popularity, for leadership, in the end, really is superseded by someone coming after you. And as a result, it's really only vanity. This world is only vanity in and of itself. And this is what he's getting at. There's no real meaning of life in what we do in this world for ourselves. It all ends in the same way. So this is the end of chapter 4, and we'll go on in the next lesson to the first part of chapter 5. So I hope you'll join me for that. But as for now, this is all for today. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.